Welcome. There we go. Welcome. Welcome back. Today is Thursday, May 5th,
Buenas tardes. Este
2022, and it is the monthly meeting of the Human Rights
de la
Commission.
Comisión de Derechos Humanos.
Can you mute the translator? Oh, no, I'm sorry. They have to be unmuted, but I don't know why we can hear them. So we can hear the translator in the room. It's all set? Thank you. Thank you. So it's Thursday, May 5th, the first Thursday of the month, which is our monthly meeting of the Revere Human Rights Commission. I welcome everyone that's here. I'll welcome you back. And I wanted to just share my screen for a moment. So we've had some interesting meetings in recent months with some need for recesses and for some disruption. And so I'd like to share a cartoon. So since we can't agree to disagree, how about we disagree on agreeing? How about we all just take a moment, realize that we may have differences, and it's okay for us to have difference of opinion, but the key thing is that we want to have a respectful and orderly meeting so that we can conduct our business. And so, in that light, I want all of you to know that have come here and that wish to speak to us. We will ensure that you have time to speak. So I plan as the chair to make sure our meeting is done right around 6 o'clock or shortly afterwards so that there is time to have the public forum section. So I promise you that, so you do not need to yell out during the meeting or be disruptive in any of those ways, because if we cannot conduct our business, then that's considered disruptive behavior. Okay, and for those of you that haven't seen it, there is posted on the door there and on the door there, and we have some extra copies. It's actually the open meeting law statute that specifically speaks to disruptive behavior. So for those of you that are videotaping the meeting, you have every right to videotape the meeting. However, please know that you cannot be walking around. You need to stay in your seat or in one place so that you can't disrupt our business. And also, everyone is asked to remain silent unless you're addressing me during the public forum. And we will have time for that. So if there's comments and yelling out, that's considered disruptive behavior. And I'll first make sure we're clear on what that entails, and then I'll ask for people to leave. So hopefully that won't even be the case, because we're all learning and sort of figuring out how to be together in these spaces. So I just wanted to sort of do that housekeeping first, okay?
Janine, can you give us the wireless password, please?
That's really sort of beyond my role as chair right now. And so it's not, so that's true. That's sort of, we're not, that's, is Paul, oh. Yeah, I'm sorry, but we need to get going now. I don't know. So. Okay. So let's take attendance. For those commissioners, please unmute yourself when I call you. Commissioner Alexis?
Present.
Reverend Timothy Bogertman?
Present.
Chief Christopher Bright?
Here.
Chief David Callahan?
Present.
Dr. Lorenzo Garcia?
Present.
Vice Chair Shema Hosseini?
Here.
Commissioner McGee?
Present.
And I'd like to welcome Commissioner McGee. She just got appointed last Monday night. She is an attorney in Revere, and she specializes in immigration and criminal law. So welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Mukabir?
Present.
Commissioner Pish,
Present.
Commissioner Reinstein,
Present.
and I am Chair Grillo-Mara. And I'd like to also acknowledge Dr. Maritza Barros, who is sitting at the end with the blue jacket. She is the HRC Director. And now we usually do a land acknowledgement, and it's an opportunity for us to take a few moments to remember and respect those that actually founded this land and were here in this land and the origins of this land. So I will share my screen. We would like to acknowledge the traditional overseers of this land on which this meeting takes place, as well as honor what this land means to the culture and traditions of those who originally occupied this space. In addition, we extend a welcome to any Aboriginal, Native American, and/or First Nation people joining us today. And the map shows sort of the state, and the area Rivera is of the eastern coast in the yellow. And I'll now show you this specific area. So we are on the land of the Pawtucket tribe. So just take a moment to recognize and remember and honor those who settled here first. And now I'll hand this over to Commissioner Pish to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair Mara. Today, May 5th, is also the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous People, especially women. President Biden announced it in 2021. Generation of American Indians and Alaska Natives have mourned missing, murdered loved ones. We encourage everyone to work together to raise this awareness. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Pish. And so this next item, Arrive and Settle, the reason that that is on the agenda is that we live in a culture that's very busy. We're more like human doings than human beings. We're very much lost in our thoughts and just talking at each other constantly. So we feel it's important to begin our meetings with some form of just settling into our bodies and our hearts and connecting in a more universal way. Now, often we do that by taking some quiet time. But there's many ways to do that. We can do that when we're out in nature. We do that when we're laughing with a friend. We can do that listening to music. And so what I'd like to do for this evening, because I thought it might be pushing it a little bit too much in these honorable chambers to play a music video. So instead, I'm going to read a quote or two from Martin Luther King Jr., and then we'll just take a few moments to reflect, and then we'll begin our business. So just give me a moment. So this is from his 1962 address at Cornell College. I am convinced that people hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they don't communicate with each other. And they don't communicate with each other because they are separated from each other. So let's just take a few moments, let those words sink in. Just in your own way, how you may feel more open-hearted and tolerant, even despite and among difference. So I ring this bell at times because it's like a gentle reminder, as opposed to the gavel, which is a stronger reminder, so it has a distinction, okay? And now our first sort of order of business is the approval of minutes from the April 7th Monday meeting, which were distributed to my fellow commissioners that have been on the HRC webpage. And it's now an opportunity if any commissioner has a comment, a proposed edit, or I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And the next item is unfinished business. So that agenda item, Human Rights Commission structure and ongoing work, happens to be our primary topic for discussion. And so I request that we go out of the order of the agenda and we address that when we get into our topics for discussion. So is there anyone opposed to going out of the order of the agenda? None noted. We'll continue. And now we will move on to Dr. Barros's message and updates. And after each of those topics, commissioners will have an opportunity if you do have a question or a comment. So I hand it to you, Dr. Barros.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to first acknowledge our commissioners. Good evening. How are you all doing today? Good, great to see the full body here. And special welcome to Molly for joining us. Thank you. Welcome to everyone who's joined us here in person. Do we have folks with us virtually? Yes? Awesome. I always look forward to every month, can we increase the numbers of who's here with us so that we can really integrate a variety of voices, right, into what we're trying to build and the work we're trying to do. So thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. I do want to reiterate Madam Chair's call for order in the space as we try to work through our discourse. We welcome differences of opinions, but we ask for civility and order and respect in these chambers, right? We're gonna make space and give space for all voices, so I wanted to name that. I did want to share a few highlights from Mayor Brian Arrigo's op-ed that I thought is some great values and our shared interest in a better life for our children, and the next generation is not. Just how and what we do to get there is up for debate. But I assure you all, this debate will be civil. So that's what we're calling for here today, civility and order. I want to remind us that we have an agenda with items that we're trying to conduct business, and that's what we're looking for input from our residents and the public, so we welcome that. There will be a time and a place to address other matters. I recognize that these matters need to be addressed, so I do want to name, we've heard the call out for a public mediation in meeting, and we will grant that meeting. Okay, so that will be something we will work towards, creating the space for us to really have this discussion about the existence of the HRC and get clear about what our priorities are moving forward, and just where do we stand as a city in regards to the abolishment of the HRC. Of course, we've named it before that we are here to stay, but I encourage folks to please, any of those thoughts and feelings you want to express today, just hold on, because we will create the space for that discussion to happen, okay? So I'd like to jump into some updates. What's great about my role is that I'm also connected administratively to the municipality, so I get to share with you all some of the things that are happening outside the walls controlled by Human Rights Commission. So I wanted to update folks on the 21-day Racial Equity Habit Building Challenge. I recognize it wasn't open to our general public or residents this year formally. That's the growth plan, hopefully, for next year. But this year, I'm excited to share that we survived the 21-day challenge as a municipality and Revere Public Schools. So thank you again, Dr. Garcia, for your partnership in that work. We had 46 participants from City Hall, from the municipality, and 66 from the public schools. So we got a little beat out by the public schools, but that's okay. As a group, over 100 people participating is awesome. We had over 60 comments in our discussion board that happened daily, and we had over 15 participants participating in our live conversations that happened 3 times throughout the 21 days. So super excited about that, and we're looking forward to launch into more opportunities to continue normalizing these conversations. So kudos to everyone who participated in that experience. Also, I'd like to...
Excuse me, Dr. Barros.
Yes.
That was just an update, but I just want to make sure that none of the commissioners have any questions or comments on that before we go on.
Yes.
None noted. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies. I'll pause on my next one. The next 2 updates I want to share are actually tied to our agenda items of discussion. The month of June is around the corner, of course, and we are planning for Pride and Juneteenth in the month of June. So we have already established a flag raising for Pride on June 1st at 5 p.m. So that's a save the date. But we do want to explore other ideas that we can engage in. We'd love one more event at the end of June to really formally close out that month in the celebrations. And then we want to, of course, acknowledge Juneteenth and have some opportunity for education around Juneteenth and celebration. So we'll have some discussions, so no need for comments from the commissioners now, because we'll be talking about that during the agenda items. But I did want to share with you all what's already happening. I've been working closely with Charlie. Forgive me, Charlie's last name.
Jafrida.
Thank you. Charlie's been an awesome partner from Parks and Rec, and Diana Lungo. Did I say that correctly? DeLonga, thank you. So sorry. But the 3 of us have been meeting to really think about the logistics as we're looking to actually then pull in voices and ideas, not just from this body, but especially also students, young people. So we're sort of making those outreach outside of these spaces so that we can gather as much good ideas and put something in the works ASAP. Okay, so I want to leave it broad too, because we want to hear from the commissioners and from those of you who joined us about what do we want to see in our city around celebrating Pride and Juneteenth, all right? The last thing I want to share is, we've mentioned previously, Remap, the Racial Equity Municipal Action Plan that the city has been committed to for the past almost 2 years, but some concentrated work over a year. In that area, we're going to finally be able to hear about what work was done, what came out of it, what was the recommendations. One recommendation, obviously, was the hiring of my position, but it's important for you all to understand the work that has undergone in that area as we work towards racial equity in the city, along with other municipalities working towards racial equity in the state of Massachusetts. So if commissioners have any questions about Remap, feel free to ask or comments, but we look forward to having a presentation during our June meeting here at the HRC. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. So just so that I'm clear, if there are any thoughts or ideas about the June events, we will wait and see how that might come up under the next topic. Is that correct?
That is correct. It really aligns with the work of our
group.
structure
Okay,
and how
great.
we do our work. Yep.
Okay, so is that,
Madam Chair, if I can just ask that we also please talk about a working group that would focus on a public mediation. Thank you.
yes, that's already on my list. So is there anything from the commissioners before we go on? It sounds like you'll have an opportunity to comment on those events within the logistics of how that will unfold.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, there's someone speaking out in the audience distracting me. I'd like order in the room, thank you.
Okay. So as a reminder that we need to be able to conduct business in a way that is undistracted so that we can pay attention, listen to other commissioners, I can take notes. And so I'm just giving this warning that if you are in the audience, you need to be silent, or if you must speak to someone next to you, you need to speak in a low voice. You should not be stating comments to any of the commissioners that are sitting here if you're in the gallery. Okay. So next time that happens and it comes to my attention, you'll have to be asked to leave. Okay. Okay. And so now we'll go to the topic for discussion, which also happened to be the unfinished business from our last meeting, because we had to table this agenda item. So we'd like to talk about the Human Rights Commission structure and ongoing work. And in our leadership meeting, which is myself, Vice Chair Hosseini, and Dr. Barros, we discussed that it would probably be most productive in the long term to have working groups. So working groups of maybe just 2 or 3 commissioners, that it makes it easier for you to communicate and, work on or research or come up with ideas that then, of course, would get presented to the fuller board, which then also would have an opportunity to get input from the community. And so in that sort of spirit, there are sort of 2 that we had come up with and now a new one. So the first one is cultural events and celebrations. The second is education and outreach. In this new group, that working group, which might be temporary or it might be long-term, would be a working group to actually create some kind of a format and vehicle for a larger public forum or even possibly a mediation outside of this meeting, so that when we're at our meeting, we can conduct business and hear from you about the agenda items, but for other topics that might be bigger topics or complaints or concerns, we'd have another vehicle for that. So this third working group would come up with some ideas of what that might look like. Who would be involved, who would moderate that, et cetera. So those were the 3 that we had suggested and come up with that are now open for discussion. And do you have anything to add before the commissioners have an opportunity, Dr. Barros?
No, I don't want to. I'd love to hear what folks are thinking first.
Okay, so I'll open it up, and any of you that feel drawn to either ask some questions or give some input on that, and I think you can also consider any of the June events. Obviously, they might fall under cultural events and celebrations or education and outreach. So how would some of the events that are coming up fall into these groups, and what would that look like going forward in the long term so that this is happening in an ongoing way?
Madam Chair, I do actually have one comment to add that includes the public, because the reason we wanted to also go, another reason we wanted to have a working group format is so that we can open pathways for collaboration with our residents. So that while commissioners are, chairing or leading these working groups, we can't do the work without your support. So I do want to name that as we're talking through this, think about how you can get involved in this structure and what might be easier, structurally that we should set up to make sure that you have the convenience and access to collaborate with us.
Thank you, Dr. Barros. If any commissioner would like to speak? First, I think what I'd like to hear is, do the names of those working groups sound appropriate, or do we have any recommendations or input on that?
Sorry. Is there like a set title for the third working group?
There is not, so we could come up with that. Thank you for adding Vice Chair Hosseini. I was going to mention that as the conversation went on, but we do not have a specific title for the third working group that would work towards a larger public forum or public mediation, sort of a big umbrella of that. So that is up for some discussion as well. So why don't we start with cultural events and celebrations? Does anyone have any input on that or opposition to that name?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Alexis. I think that is a great title to also include several different, events or projects that we could have. I'm thinking about, oftentimes in the summertime, we've had the carnival and different community opportunities to really engage and celebrate our city. We have events down at the beach. So I think that those events that we look forward to and celebrate, I think it'll be great to add our voices, our community voices, to see how we can add a cultural component to that and just celebrate different cultures as we celebrate the love for our cities. I think that's a great way to kind of add that work as well. Education and outreach, I just want to volunteer myself. I think that's one of my passions, and really our call as the HRC is to educate and reach out to our community as a whole. So I love that sub-working group.
If I suggest, the third one I think will need some more thought, so why don't we stick with the first two titles? And I also want to mention, in case everyone is not aware, there is a citywide event planning committee that Dr. Barros is on, and a number of people in the city from different departments or commissions and boards that are looking at sort of having a better coordination and communication system around these events. So that's something that is exciting and new, that events have been happening, but now to have it be a little bit more streamlined. So in case you weren't aware of that, that just recently formed since Dr. Barros has been here. Any other commissioners about the first two titles? Cultural events and celebrations, which would be sort of planning, suggestions, recommendations, logistics, and then education and outreach would involve more educational topics in community outreach in various ways.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner?
Just a question. So thank you for explaining the first two. So I know we're going to kind of work through a wordsmith the third. So I know part of what we discuss is a mediation, but if we're talking about a public forum, I guess maybe I'm looking, because I've in our some of our training we've talked about outreach, or I have an interest in community outreach. So I'm just curious if education outreach is community outreach, or is that would be considered under the third?
My sense is there could be some overlap, but Dr. Barros, do you have anything to add?
Commissioner, can you just elaborate more on the difference for you on the two that you named?
Sure. I'm just looking for clarification because I know one is, maybe I'm wondering what falls under education outreach versus the third that we're trying to kind of work out. I know that part of it is going to be mediation, but we're talking about public forum. So are we envisioning like education outreach? Would that also be like going into different community Would that also be community outreach, or would that be really reserved for the third?
I think the third one is truly focused on response and restoration, whereas the second one is probably what you're thinking, where it leans into the outreach. And
Great.
I think the goal was to keep it broad that way so that we can try to approach it differently depending on the needs of the communities that we're serving.
I appreciate that, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
Yes, Dr. Garcia.
So I just want to say that conceptually, this makes sense. This is a structure that we actually have in our school department. Working groups are the way to go. And to the title of the third group, I would add the word evaluation. So this work, how do we know what we're doing is working? So data collection and making sure that we report out to the public what's working versus what's not working, that's critical in any type of endeavor that we put out there. So I would say it would be education, outreach, and evaluation. That's my proposal.
Just to clarify, so the second group,
Is that the second group?
yes,
Okay, second group.
community outreach, education, and evaluation, is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, add the word evaluation.
Can I ask if evaluation should maybe be considered as another working group? Because I could imagine the need for evaluation and assessment around programs and events as well.
Could be.
Or do each of those groups have built into them evaluation mechanisms? So that that's just, instead of having a separate group, that's always built into these groups?
Okay, so may I? So I think that either we add or we create another group. Because sometimes if we leave the word evaluation or data collection or anything like that, it loses its sense. It needs to stand out so that public know what we're doing is correct, and we collecting data, we analyzing data, we see what's working versus what's not working, and provide feedback. I think it should stand as a lone committee or group. That's, yeah.
I have one comment. I appreciate that, Commissioner Garcia. Thank you, Dr. Garcia. I'm wondering if maybe those working groups who are responsible for each of those subdivisions are better able to assess the evaluation and the value of what they're doing. So I'd love your comment on that, Dr. Garcia, if you understand what I'm saying. But I think your thought to have that distinct, because it seems as if the work is going to pile on, you know, so it seems to make sense to have it a separate subdivision. I'm just wondering if those folks who are ahead of the other two commissions will be in a better position to evaluate. But I think overall, as a Human Rights Commission, we all need to be updated on the work of all of it. So I think there may be room. It's just food for thought. Thank you.
So does anyone else want to comment on just that thought of should evaluation be sort of listed separately or have its own group, or should it be built into each of the groups? I'm curious to hear just briefly from each commissioner on that.
Madam Chair, I kind of agree with Dr. Garcia. I mean, separate group, we can do both. The education group, you can do an evaluation after any event, and then to have a group to really analyze, you know, looking at the data closely and get the final products and share that with a whole community.
Anyone else to comment on that distinction?
I think having an evaluation aspect integrated in each one of their groups, I feel like it's going to be a lot more efficient, because it could be done like while we're planning for events and seeing the event happen, that evaluation can be happening simultaneously, so we could save time rather than waiting for the event to end, then sending it to the evaluation team. Like, I just feel like it's a lot more efficient to have it integrated.
Anyone else? I'm curious to know, would Remap have any role in data collection in this regard, so that we're not duplicating efforts, or is there data collection on a bigger level?
Madam Chair, we are on the same page here. I was going to suggest that we can formally have it as a separate working group and allow me as the executive director to own that working group, if you will, to support the other working groups so that we can actually standardize, streamline, right? What are the standard practices around data collection as it aligns with what we're doing within the municipality? Because it's going to end up feeding and serving both ways. So it makes sense to me that I could serve as a resource, and then it would be integrated in each group, but have that sort of formality as a working group so that we make sure we're producing resources for best practices around assessment and evaluation.
So something to consider, if we're now talking about 4 working groups, okay? So let's get back to practicals. We're talking about education, cultural events and celebrations, education outreach, the special group for public mediations, if that's what the title is, and evaluation. So we already have 4 groups, so that means we would have like 2 people, partner for each group, because it's already taking up 8 people, and we might need some room. I mean, 2, maybe 3. Yes, Dr. Barros.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask the commissioners, what are your thoughts around not having the public mediation working group be a permanent group? And I would imagine there'd be other groups that come up in the future that wouldn't have to be a permanent working group, but that would sunset as the work is no longer needed. So I'm curious if folks thought about that, because I imagine that in the community outreach group, we're going to be looking for ways to proactively and in a way that we normalize seeking the voices and feedback from our community. So there's always going to be open public spaces for public conversations. But I think that this working group is specific to an incident. And I want to name that while we're here talking about now 3 groups or 4, there may be times that other working groups arise and then need to sunset, right? And not to put too much pressure on all the commissioners, that's why we have our residents, right? And our community here to find the pathways for them to come in and collaborate with us so we do this collectively.
I agree with that. I think we should not even call it working groups. We should call it a task force. So that's a better word. Because basically what you're doing is a temporary group of people who are going to look into specific issues and address it. So that's why I would name it. That will give you more space for potential groups along the way in the future. So I would support that.
So the name task force instead of working group, is anyone opposed to that?
But just to clarify, Dr. Garcia, and let me know if I'm saying this correctly, you're talking about just the specific group around public mediation?
Mediation, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. So far what I'm hearing is that there would be the working groups of cultural events and celebrations, education and outreach, and evaluation, 3 of those, and then a task force that would probably be temporary to get a public mediation process up and running. And that would probably just be a temporary group. So, any other comments about, before we get into, is the title of the task force Public Mediation Task Force?
I think the suggestion's been made. Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think it would be to go with task force, as Dr. Garcia said. That makes sense since it has a limited scope and it's for a certain time, and it can arise when needed, as Dr. Barros says. It can end. I think it's a great idea to make that a task force and have the other 3 be working groups.
And the title, Public Mediation Task Force, seems relevant and pertinent, appropriate. Okay. So any other comments and questions before we decide who's going to be on these working groups and task forces?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I wanted to name the need for bias education and a response system in the city. But I know that this is one place for certain where if people have experienced any bias, microaggressions, or anything of that sort, they may inform us about it. And we know that bias exists within our community, and if we don't have a system for folks to report and inform us of their experiences, we don't have any mechanism to deal with the harm and work to restore the harm. So I was curious your thoughts about building a bias education response team within. I know it's more things to commit to, but we can think about whom would serve in these roles, and it is something that would take time to develop. But I wanted to just put it out there and even understand what folks' feelings are around a bias education response. Do we see that this might be a good place to develop that type of system, or do we think it should happen elsewhere? Just some thoughts on that would be helpful.
Before we go on, before the commissioners speak, I'd be interested as chair in being sensitive to how many groups we're forming and what will be in the time and energy that will be involved. Where does, the city staff fall in this bias education response? Because this is something that could be almost like 24/7, and the HRC is going to need some support on this. So I think we can have a role, but I'd be concerned if we're taking the brunt of this. I think we could take a lead, but I just want to state that. But I'm happy to hear from others.
Yes, let me just clarify. The brunt would sit with me as the Chief Officer of Talent and Culture, but was just thinking of it is a system of response that would require a team. Because you could imagine that once there's a pathway to share, we're going to uncover a lot which might not be shared right now, right? We think, oh, nothing's happening, but when you have the pathway, you uncover these things. And in order to respond timely and to give the quality of attention to what has to happen with a restorative justice approach, not conflict management. It takes time, it takes intentionality, it takes training. I'm just curious if this is something that commissioners feel like, no way, keep this out of our chambers, or if this is something that we would be interested in being a part of. I'll let Commissioner McGee.
Just to jump in, because I did feel, I like the other working groups, but just to speak for myself, I definitely felt called to be a part of that working group. So if it was something that was a part of this commission, I would definitely want to be a part of that. Similarly to Commissioner Lewis, I would call to education and outreach, but I think a lot of these go hand in hand. It just makes so much sense what you're saying. So at least that it fits with what we're doing, yes. And to be a part of it, yes. Thanks.
I'm sorry I'm speaking too much, but anyway. So I think I like to see this vertical alignment between the City Hall, what we're doing, the Human Rights Commission, and the school department. Actually, that form already exists. We just approved it. The school committee has approved it. So it's a form that will allow us to allow both opponents and people in support of the Human Rights Commission, those who live in a democracy, people have opinions. And it's a place where things can be reported. Obviously, if I can contribute anyway, I'll volunteer myself to that committee, for that committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. I will follow up with you.
Okay?
So back to the topic, and I want to be mindful of time. We have 3 working groups: cultural events and celebrations, education and outreach, and evaluation. There's a task force for the public mediation, to get some vehicle in place for that, and that will likely then dissolve. And I'm not really quite sure where we're at. I'm hearing some commissioners are interested and receptive to a bias education response, something that's more restorative justice based. I'm just not exactly clear on, are we forming that tonight, or is this just planting the seed? Okay.
Yes, no, I was just curious what folks' thoughts were about that. Can I also say that, for example, if we look at cultural events and programming, that's one working group, right? I don't want people to get overwhelmed by the numbers, right? When we start talking about different events, people are going to attach to particular events, and so there'll be smaller groups, right? So the idea is delegation and reaching out and getting more voices to come on board so the burden is not solely on the commissioners. I just want to name that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we actually form these groups?
I just want to echo what Commissioner McGee and Dr. Garcia mentioned. I think this is a really good, something that we should definitely establish in the city, especially if we are going to assumably make it anonymous so that more and more people can report those particular circumstances, and I too would like to join that.
Madam Chair, I have one comment to add. I'm thinking also, Dr. Barros, if I love the idea of bias education and the response system. I think that that's critical. I'm wondering if we can expand it where residents and the community can give us input with challenges that they face, for an example, around access, or one thing in particular that stands out to me is language. So I know that it's been wonderfully integrated into our public school system, so I just want to say thank you for that for the city, because a lot of students and their families face challenges with language, being bilingual. So I've seen that the city has done a wonderful job integrating, Hispanic and other languages. So I'm wondering if, aside from biases, if we can just include it, if we could expand it and make it more broad so that we can have a response to any, really, and every need of our residences with respect to access and equal opportunity.
Madam Chair, I also look at the outreach and education group. A lot of things falls into that, and I'm also wondering, because we were talking about having the early on talking about learning and listening tours, something that we are doing in the community rather than just soliciting biases and information, so we can do both. So I'm wondering in that, because there's a lot of things, as I think, fall into outreach and education. So in that group, what if we can have a subgroup, and then we can also involve community in that subgroup? We can invite community participant into that subgroup so that we can work on different topics.
Thank you. So I promised the public opportunity to speak. I'm watching the clock. And my suggestion is that we have a motion to agree on the 3 working groups in the task force: cultural events and celebrations, education and outreach, evaluation. Those are the 3 working groups, and the special task force for public mediations. I suggest we start with that, try to get some members to commit, and then we sort of see how those unfold. And we know that the restorative, the bias education response is a need, but that may fall under education and outreach. We may learn things from the public mediation. I mean, I think that we can sort of revisit, but we need to start somewhere, and we need to make some decisions, and I want to be mindful that we're finished with business in 10 or 15 minutes. So Does anyone have any additional questions or issues before I entertain a motion for those 3 working groups I named in the special task force? So who would like to make a motion for 3 working groups, cultural events and celebrations, education and outreach, evaluation, and a special task force for public mediations?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. So now that we have those, the hard part, who would like to, who would be interested in the 3 working groups and the task force? So we're talking about the cultural events and celebrations, the education outreach, evaluation, and then the special task force for public mediation. So I think, go ahead, Commissioner Pish.
Madam Chair, I would like to join the outreach and education.
Me as well, Madam Chair, thank you.
I would like to join that too. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So let's keep in mind that we can't have too many people on one group, so I'm curious to hear who's interested in cultural events and celebrations.
I am interested in the culture events and celebrations.
I'd be interested as well, Madam Chair.
Great. What about we can come back, we can always have a 3rd person. What about evaluation? You're not on the commission, but we know that we can go to you.
I'll be on that commission for data collection and evaluation.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I feel like the work that I've been doing for the community is more aligned with cultural events and celebration as well as education and outreach. If you want to add me to that committee, I'll be happy to help. Otherwise, I can be an advisor based on the work that I've been doing with the city and you know, I worked with Chief Bright, with Chief Callahan, with the DPW, with the Revere Rec to organize events in the city. We are also empowering a lot of marginalized groups in the city. We worked with the Latino community, and Liana is here. I think the work that we have been doing in the city already is aligned with those 2 groups, and I volunteer myself and education and experience for that.
So I know you've been very involved in the cultural events and celebrations, Commissioner, but did I hear you that you're willing to sit on the evaluation group or no? And that's what I'm trying to find, a 2nd person for evaluation.
Madam,
Thank you.
Sorry.
I was waiting for you since you initiated the idea,
I knew
but
that was coming.
I didn't want to call you in. So thank you, Dr. Garcia.
I have a question of clarification. Can an HRC member be in more than one? Okay, so if
Yes.
that's the case, then I would also love to be a part of the evaluation team as well.
myself too, Madam Chair. It's my favorite topic.
Evaluation. And since we have others who volunteered for evaluation, Commissioner Mukabir, I can put you on the cultural events and celebrations. I believe that was sort of your first choice.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So right now, I have, for these groups, and I, as chair, can sort of sit in on any of them, and of course, Dr. Barros will be overseeing them, but I have Outreach and Education, Commissioner Pish, Commissioner Alexis, Commissioner Reinstein, Cultural Events and Celebrations, Vice Chair Hosseini, Chief Wright, Commissioner Mukabir, and then Evaluation, Commissioner McGee, Dr. Garcia, Vice Chair Hosseini, and Commissioner Pish. So now, for the Special Task Force for Public Mediation.
I can assist with that, Madam Chair, and I'm thinking, again, as a part of the structure of the Human Rights Commission is to have ongoing mediations if necessary. So I'm hoping that the work that this task force accomplishes will then be the blueprint of how we can continue to accommodate those mediations. So I will assist in that task force.
Yes, thank you, and agreed.
Madam Chair, I would like to suggest Molly for that role because of her background.
So accepted. Thank you very much for that recommendation.
I'd love my fellow sister at the bar to join.
I'm happy to join my sister at the bar. That is why. And thank you to my commissioner for the nomination. So, yes.
And actually, if I may, as chair, maybe I'll add into that, to that task force as needed. Okay. So we have that. I will sort of follow up by email to make sure that we are clear in the roles. And then because they're working groups or task forces and they're small, it should be pretty easy for you to be able to work together and communicate, or one person takes certain responsibilities. And of course, the entire HRC and the community is involved. So it's not to be clear, it's not to make decisions. It's not to deliberate, it's not to vote, it's to gather information, to do sort of the legwork and the logistics, and to then report back to the full body. Okay? Yes, Dr. Barros.
Madam Chair, thank you. I would just like to pose a question for the public during the public forum. Let us know, advise us on what's the best way to communicate, to outreach, to get you involved, to create the pathways for you to join us in these working groups. I'd love to hear ideas from the public.
Okay. Is there any other business before we move to the public forum?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner,
I just want to agree with Dr. Barros. We are here not to do the work, but it's to empower people. You know, we need everybody in here. We were just normal folks volunteering in the city of Revere, and we were empowered to be in here. And our term is coming to an end, and we need new faces. We need new people to be empowered as well. So be part of this change that is happening in the city, and let us know how we can help everybody in the city so they can be a major player in the city.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Reinstein, I know you wanted to
Hi,
speak.
sorry. I'm just requesting, before we do the public meeting, if we could read the mission of the Human Rights Commission, because we forgot to do that at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder, and I apologize for my oversight. I'm just waiting to hear from our acting clerk. So before we go into the public forum, I'm curious to know if by raise of hands, how many people are intending to speak? Okay. All right. So I will ask our acting clerk if there is a sign-up sheet. So I will ask you to fill in the sign-up sheet. And I also want to review a few things about the public forum before we state our mission statement. And that is that when you're in the public forum at the podium, you address your questions or comments to me as the chair. You're not directing to the commissioners. You're speaking to me as the chair. There'll be a time limit. If there's only as many people as I saw, then I will give each person a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. If for some reason a bunch of others would like to speak and you have similar comments, then I would ask that you have one person from your group to share your comments or questions. And we, as Dr. Barros just said and Commissioner Mukabir reinforced, we're asking you to speak on what we discussed, the business that was discussed. There are other venues. You heard us working on those. There are other venues where there will be public mediations or other opportunities for public discussion. So I'm asking you to try to remember to speak about the discussion, the topics that we discussed, okay? So before we do that, just so that we all remember why we're here,
I'm sorry, just point of clarification. Usually at public meetings that I've been a part of, when someone comes to the podium, they state their name and their full address. Will they be, they will have to do that as well, correct?
yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
We want to have a written record so that I can refer to it. So does everyone have, when our acting clerk is ready, she can screen share the mission statement. You're welcome to join us if you'd like as we state the mission statement together. So, you can unmute yourself, please. The mission of the Revere Human Rights Commission is to promote human and civil rights and empower all people of Revere by ensuring that everyone, especially the most vulnerable and marginalized, have equitable opportunities, equal access, and are treated with dignity, respect, fairness, and justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, can I ask one question? I'm looking at the time, 6:03. Of course, I want to get to public forum. I just recognize that Pride and Juneteenth, we didn't get to touch upon that as far as ideas from the commissioners. And I want to make sure that the public can offer some ideas because obviously it's very timely and we want to get some ideas. So I don't know if we have just 5 minutes to see if anyone has anything to offer. And if not, I still want it to be an open agenda item for folks to share with from the public.
Thank you, Dr. Barros. Why don't we just take a few minutes? I ask commissioners to be very lean of speech and speak if you have any ideas or recommendations that Dr. Barros can bring back to her working team, and then we'll go on to the public forum. Excuse me? Recognition?
So we have two groups in our city that we would like to really congratulate. It's the Asian American Pacific Islander Month, the month of May, and also the Jewish American Heritage Month as well. So we all know the historical contribution that these two groups have brought to the United States and paved the way to its success. So we have great individualities and personalities that have really, contributed to the history, culture, and served in the politics and government and science as well. The contribution they brought, we talk about Albert Einstein, who was Jewish, so it's a month of celebration. When you see a person of Jewish descent or a person of Asian descent, congratulate the person because they indeed, their ancestors really did a good job for this country. Thank you.
Thank you. It's also Cinco de Mayo. I forgot to mention that at the start. Anybody else?
I would like to, well, this is not really fully planned out, but to see if we could get some Black young artists for Juneteenth, especially, obviously, on their own accord. But I want to take the opportunity of Juneteenth to notice the talent that we have in Revere that are of African or Black background. A group of friends and I were thinking about having some sort of mural or have a banner that either says like, no, Black Lives Matter, or anything that suggests like, Juneteenth is a day to understand and recognize the history that occurred in our country. So I was just thinking like having, displaying some Black artists and showing their work.
Thank you. Is that something, Dr. Barros, that you can consider in the logistics, until we have our little working groups, that right now, while you're working on Juneteenth, that you can bring that recommendation of some Black artists to maybe display their work as part of the celebration?
Yeah, no, just to make sure we move along here, just shoot out the ideas, I'll take them down, and we will take it from there, yeah.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hosseini, you read my mind, and also Dr. Barros, I'm wondering for our next meeting in June, we can also have guest speaker for the Pride Month and then also for the Juneteenth at our meeting. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if there was any way to spotlight any maybe Black-owned businesses or any businesses that offer any type of service to the LGBTQ community, in that way to spotlight and just bring it back to Revere and what we have going on in this city, that was something that came to mind if it was at all possible.
Thank you.
Madam Chair? I recall with the MLK celebration, the school department did a great job, and Dr. Garcia putting together something. Maybe we could call upon, I believe there's a Pride group at Revere High School. Maybe we could bring and include them as well. I think that would be great for Pride. Thank you.
Thank you. So since Dr. Barros is already working with people on this, we're going to sort of trust that she's taking some of these notes, and we'll do the best she can to incorporate it. Okay. So it looks like we have 7 people that have signed up. And I would, those of you that signed up, is there anyone that does not live in Revere? Anyone that has signed this sheet? Because I just want to give preference and priority to people in the community. Otherwise, I'll just go through the list. I'm going to, and I think we have one on Zoom. Is that what you're trying to tell me? Okay. Okay. Just let me know if she does. Okay. So Ed DeVoe is first, and I'm going to set a timer. When I ring the bell, that means that you're coming up on your time. So that means to sort of wrap up maybe in 10 seconds or a sentence or two or a few breaths or however it is.
I'll make it short and sweet. My name is Ed DeVoe. I live at 216 Crescent Ave in Beachmont. First and foremost, I want to say it's an honor and a privilege to be up here before you, and I truly applaud all the work that you've been doing, and it's something that's been a long time needed. I'm glad to see it. And I also want to offer my services and participate particularly in the Education and Outreach Committee. So as a community member, I would like to throw my name in to help support that group in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeVoe. Next is Tom Bellingham.
Thank you very much for giving me a minute. I'm going to give a lot of time back, too. I do actually have a question about the cultural events and activities. First of all, I got to say I'm sorry. I was given really bad intel on this meeting. I thought it was Cinco de Mayo themed. But also want to give a couple shout-outs. Shout out to my boy, Primetime 99 Alex Stein. Shout out to Lucy Babb's Substack, she's awesome, and shout out to Diplo, aka Dinah Ploss. My question is, I think this would bring the community together. I recommend if you have enough city funds to rent ice cream trucks, like multiple ice cream trucks for these events. Free ice cream will bring people together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham.
Thank you.
I actually said at the beginning, the different things that bring us together, music, nature, and food is definitely one as well.
They're expensive. $500 an hour, roughly, for planning purposes.
Janet Long.
Good evening. My name is Janet Long. I live at 360 Revere Beach Boulevard. And I, too, like you, am delighted to be in front of you. I've been Zooming too long. So trust me, I've been watching, observing, and I'm filled with honor and impressive. I'm so impressed with the quality of the talent we have on this team. And I love the work that you're doing. So I wanted to say that I moved from Linfield to here 5 years ago, and I told all my friends in Linfield, I said, the reason I'm coming here is I want a diversity of ideas and people. And it's a little rough, but I can see that that is here, and I want to be part of that, and I want to help our community be stronger and stronger, and I do believe that's through the diverse voices that we have here. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long, and I really appreciate your courage to go from a Zoomer to coming in person. That's a big step, and it's happy to hear the importance of diversity and how that rings true for you. Gina Castiello.
The red light, could you hear me? Hi, thank you for having me. Guess the squeaky wheel gets the grease, huh? A lot was said tonight, and I have a lot to say, and we're not going to end it all in this meeting, but to keep it to what we were talking about, Mr. Garcia was talking about supporting this group as a democracy.
Just excuse me, his title is Dr. Garcia, so it would be helpful to, refer to him as Dr. Garcia.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Dr. Garcia.
No, thank you.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you.
Dr. Garcia, I was trying to keep my focus on you and not look at anybody because you want me to keep my focus on you. He said that the Human Rights Commission, people who support it, they're supporting a democracy. Well, the United States of America is a republic, so I just want to make that clear. Also, we're talking about cultural events and celebrations. I happen to be of an Italian descent. We've discussed this about Christopher Columbus Day, and this group is solely responsible, the Black Lives Matter in this community, for stopping Christopher Columbus Day and calling it Indigenous People Day. That's not all-inclusive. The same people that are doing this call me names personally. We won't get into that right now. That's another topic for another discussion. Dr. Barros, I always respected and loved the opportunity to talk. Thank you for the offer to join the groups, but I cannot join any of these groups. Pushing critical race theory and Black Lives Matter is against my personal values, and it's against my values to teaching children through our Revere Public School system. This commission is helping that along the way. I personally disapprove of it, and a lot of people in this community disapprove of it, and we're not being heard. So I'm glad that I am being heard and bringing attention to this racist Human Rights Commission that needs to be abolished. Thank you.
We'll take your comments. Thank you. We'll take your comments under advisement, and some of those comments that you've made will be addressed in other venues.
May I add one more thing? The 3 minutes is up. Oh, my 3 minutes is up? No, you didn't. And I'm really glad that Mayor Arrigo is paying attention, because it's been since May 6th, 2021, since I complained, and I have not been heard. Yes, they reached out to me, but I was looking for a public forum, and I was denied many, and I'm glad I got it, and I hope we continue to get it, because this community is loved by many. I'm called a racist for saying Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Santos.
Buenos tardes. Janine, I'm not being sarcastic. Your hair looks fantastic today. So in celebration.
Please state your name and address
Mary
for the
Santos.
record.
You don't have to say your address. But I just want to say, there's so much tension in the room that we decided that we would come and celebrate Cinco de Mayo. So you see my Cinco hat with de Mayo, okay? Cinco de Mayo. So I just have two things. 1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila, floor. Come on, have some levity. We don't have any levity
Madam
anymore.
Chair.
We have no levity. Where are jokes? Where are the jokes? What's wrong with that?
This is not relevant
What's
to
wrong
the
with that?
agenda, Madam
This is
Chair.
not relevant.
This is
And this
why I'm
is
trying to make, this is what we
misappropriation,
used to do.
cultural
No, it
misappropriation.
isn't. No, it isn't. No, it
Madam
isn't.
Chair.
We used to make fun. We used to have fun
Madam
together.
Chair, escort it out.
We used to have
So,
fun
Miss-
together.
Miss
What did
Santos?
the Mexican fireman name
Miss
his twin
Santos.
boys?
Madam Chair.
Jose and Jose B. Have a nice
Madam
day.
Chair.
Buenas noches.
Madam Chair.
So
No.
I didn't hear what happened over there, but those comments were not relevant to the agenda, and some would take offense to referring to Cinco de Mayo in that way.
Thank you.
So now this conduct is disruptive.
Let's move to the next speaker, Madam Chair, please.
I'm not sure, Beltran, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly.
Yes.
Pues yo vengo de hace como 2013 me mudé para acá después de vivir toda mi vida fuera de mainland. Entonces,
Jose, is there someone that could translate?
you should speak Spanish. This is human rights.
We need
Yes.
to learn. We need to
Vamos a
learn.
hablar en español.
We need to
Yes.
learn.
Ella me va a
Yes.
ayudar, vente mamá. Explícale
Yes.
a ella que no sabe español.
¿Cuándo hace que se mudó?
Como, a ver, como 8 años.
She moved to the United States about 8 years ago,
Pero soy ciudadana americana.
but she's a U.S. citizen.
Sí, aunque vivía en un territorio propiedad de Estados Unidos. Aunque vivía en un territorio que es propiedad de Estados Unidos,
She lives in U.S. territory.
que es propiedad de Estados Unidos,
It's property of the United States.
Estados Unidos siempre fue por el territorio
The United-
mío, lugar de nacimiento.
The United States always went for her territory.
Sí. Muchas personas que están aquí son mis amigos
Many people who are here are my friends.
y me tratan como mejor me trataban en mi país.
They treat me better than they treated me in my country.
Yo he sido bien exitosa aquí.
I have been very successful here.
Yo sé hablar muy bien el inglés,
Entonces, ¿para qué me estás- I know how to speak English very well,
pero yo quiero demostrar que si estamos aquí tenemos que hablar en español también,
but I
¿verdad?
want to show you guys that if we're here, we can also speak Spanish.
Y yo sé. Sí, quiero decirle que por favor no nos dividan. Yo siento que Revere es mi casa y me han recibido bien.
I want to ask you all not to divide us. I've been living in Revere and I've been living happy.
Y ella, Diana, es mi mejor amiga
And Diana is my best friend,
y yo la quiero como una hermana.
and I love her as a sister.
No me gusta que la traten como la tratan ella. Yo la quiero mucho. Ella fue de las primeras personas que me dio su cariño en este estado.
She was one of the first people who gave me love in the state.
Y de verdad que podemos diferir en la política,
We can make a difference in our politics,
Pero-
disagree in
Disag-
politics,
pero todos queremos lo mejor para este estado
but we all want the best for the state.
y queremos que sea legal
And we want it to be legal
y que no hayan divisiones.
and that there's no divisions.
Y todas estas personas que están aquí, queremos que piensen igual que yo.
And all these people in front of, I want them to think just like me.
Yo no veo la necesidad de que haya falta un task force.
She doesn't, I don't think there's a
¿Para
need
qué?
for task force.
Vamos a hacer una fiesta y vamos a bailar.
She says, let's make a party and let's go dancing.
Y vamos a olvidarnos de dónde vino aquel o el otro. Gracias.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing your story and for affirming that we have a very monolingual country, which is unfortunate.
Madam Chair, if you can, I'm not sure if I missed it, but her name and what was the address for our record?
Her address was Ocean Ave. What number Ocean Ave?
I decline to disclose that, but it's in Ocean Ave.
Well, it's not a requirement that people need to be residents of Revere, although we would like to give preference to
The name
residents
is
of
what we
Revere.
missed.
And what's your name? I think was Beltran. And your first name?
Bonnie, trying to use a nickname. No, I don't want to be here, Revere. That's more than enough information.
Okay.
That is personal, confidential information.
It is.
According to federal law.
It is typical procedure to ask everyone to have their name and address. So, thank you, thank you. We have one more person, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, Ina or Ina Tall? Oh, Ina, okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ina Tall. I live at 100B Florence Avenue here in Revere, and I'm so happy to be here in front of you. It is an honor. You guys are doing really a great job. Mayor Menino really picked the best, to be appointed for these positions, and I'm really happy that you represent our city very well. Even though we have people coming out of city and try to maybe disrupt things here, we're just gonna, like Michelle Obama say, we're gonna fly, we're gonna be high, what is it? That when they go low, we go high. So, they can come and, life goes on. But really what I wanna say is that, yes, this is a beautiful city. I am an immigrant. I've been in this country for probably 26 years or so. I come from West Africa, and I feel like this is my new home. This is where I've established myself with my, family. My daughter goes to the high school, so this is where, my life is, and to see people coming from outside and really come and try to make fun of us really is offensive. To come and talk about a holiday, if you want to talk about a holiday, then make some research before you come and honor that holiday. You're talking about people who disrespected Christopher Columbus, you come and you do the same or worse. Like, come on now, you come here, there are rules, and I've been watching this for the past 3 months, and my friend sent me videos and telling me, because I didn't realize, but she's like, you need to know what's going on in our city, like, you need to be here. She is asking people to come because we need to speak, not people from outside. And yes, I understand that there are some people here from Revere that do not agree with us, but I love them because they're my neighbor. And that's, those discussions need to happen. They don't understand Black Lives Matter. I can explain why, I can explain why Black Lives Matter is important. So, you need to ask questions. Education is key.
Excuse me,
quiet in the gallery, please.
She has her space at the podium. Others have had their time. This is disruptive. Please continue, and I'm sorry for
Madam
this.
Clerk, I'd ask that person be removed from the room for insulting this woman up here speaking. I heard it from over here. I heard it from over here.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes.
You know what? It's best that we ignore because, like, she came. She tried to disrupt. Nobody reacted. She went and sat down. Let's just ignore her. So what I was saying... Yeah. So what I was saying, I actually forgot, but
Yeah, and
education is key. If you want to have a debate, and if you want people to listen to you, come do your research. Complain about something that matters, but don't come and be a clown, because really we don't have time for that. We really don't. Thank you.
Who is the resident? So I will give you 1 minute to speak because I thought that we already went through this, so come on up. Okay, so you'll have just a minute less than everybody else. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Gina Ambrosino, and I am not in favor of this Human Rights Commission. I don't like how they're infiltrating the school department and the school system. My son's coming home with stuff that does not make sense to me. I don't raise him to be racist. He loves everybody, he plays with everybody, he does everything, so I don't like what's going on. I don't agree with it, and I don't want it to be taught to my son. So I think there's others that don't like it either, and they have to have the chance to speak up. So we do need that mediation, a public mediation. Thank you.
So thank you. And some of those issues that were raised, like the last speaker, I think we addressed, those will have other venues. So you really do not need to keep coming to our monthly meeting when we're trying to conduct business and plan activities, because we've heard you. We have said that we're going to work on vehicles for those kind of discussions. So, I said you don't have to come here and keep repeating those same complaints. We've heard them. So now that the public forum is done, and we're beginning to be disruptive, why don't we entertain a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair,
Second.
I would like just to make some comments before we end this meeting. I just want to acknowledge Ed DeVoe and his willingness to volunteer. This is like we are opening those committees to the public, and I highly suggest him and recommend him for education. We worked together in creating the 8-week tech support program in the city of Revere, which was successful, and I highly recommend him for that commission. And I hear Gina, I'm sorry. There is some distraction, obviously, but I want to recommend Jane. She was talking about the diversity in our city, and we want to welcome her to this group. And also, I highly recommend her to be part of the cultural events and celebration. And we are here to listen those groups that we established today. If anybody wants to have some ideas that there are outside of those groups, we are welcoming other ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Quiet. That's what it sounds like. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Aye.